Hi guys. So we've heard reports in the media about how products of animal origin, animal products travelling from Great Britain into Northern Ireland, because Northern Ireland is part of the customs union when it comes to goods, they're facing checks. And this is creating delays, and we've heard of all the problems that are taking place at the border in Northern Ireland. Now, it's not just products of animal origin that are facing delays and checks and problems. It's also plants. And you're going to hear from a business owner in Essex who exports plants into Northern Ireland, for example, and he's going to explain some of the problems that he's facing at the moment. So let's hear what he had to say.
Morning.
So what's your experience? Do you ship a lot normally to Northern Ireland?
Yeah, we normally have a sort of regular, steady flow of orders online for Northern Ireland. They're still coming.
So the orders are still coming, but you've stopped the sale of plants into Northern Ireland?
At the moment, we have been prevented from shipping them by AFA, which is the inspector on behalf of DEFRA. The interpretation of the legislation by themselves is that we shouldn't be sending plants there, even though plants and plant products are part of this grace period.
So what he's talking about here, the grace period, is that there's a period of time where certain products are allowed to be shipped into Northern Ireland without these restrictions. But the government, the UK government, is telling his company, no, don't send them, which doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, I'm not criticizing the man who's talking here. He's the business owner. I don't think he's telling lies here. I think there's so much confusion that DEFRA, the government department, is just telling businesses, look, we don't know what we're supposed to be doing. Best not to sell things into Northern Ireland for the moment.
So you believe it falls under the grace period. That's something that I know Michael Gove is trying to extend. But if you're not clear now on whether you can use that allowance, then is a grace period really going to help you?
A grace period won't help unless it absolutely goes back to the way it was before.
A grace period will only help if it goes back to the way it was before. What he's talking about is going back to before Brexit. The grace period is just to extend. So if it's not working at the moment and the problem is not time, then giving people more time is not going to fix the problem. It's just going to kick the can down the road. It may help for some businesses to get ready, but where was the government during the transition period? The transition period was for the UK government to prepare for Brexit. Now, the problem here is that businesses were never told there's going to be this chaos. You had a Brexiteer government telling businesses, don't worry, everything is going to be okay. Or there may be some bumps on, in the road, and there may be a little bit of disruption, but it should be sorted out. Businesses can't sell their products. That's not disruption. That's catastrophic. If you have a business that relies on exporting goods and you can't export those goods, then you're going to go to the wall. You're going to have to lay people off. You're going to have to close down. Just giving them more time now isn't going to fix it. Now, if the issue is time, then why the hell didn't the government ask for an extension to the Brexit transition period? Boris Johnson and Michael Gove were telling businesses, get ready for Brexit. But the government were not ready for Brexit because the government don't have the checks put in place. The grace period is to allow the British government to get up to speed. This is not so much to help businesses, it's more to help the British government get up to speed. And if the British government are asking now to extend the grace period to 2023, well, wouldn't it have made more sense to extend the transition period for another 2 years, which the European Union were offering, and Boris Johnson put in legislation to stop, to forbid?
I think through some lobbying, Michael Gove has now written a very, I think probably yesterday, to the EU specifying and specifically citing that mail order plants need to continue in the normal way, because businesses like mine stand to lose hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of revenue every year.
How much money do you think this is costing you?
This could potentially cost us as a business about £500,000 this year in lost revenue if we can't ship our goods to Northern Ireland. At the moment, it's a low season in the winter. There's not too many people out there planting, but given another, spring is looming fast on the horizon, and that's when, we do the peak of our trade.
So if you're potentially quite concerned then that this grace period is due to end in the spring, that could really have an impact.
Absolutely. I mean, if we can't get it sorted, it's going to be very detrimental to not just our business, but the whole nursery and horticultural sector. In both Northern Ireland, the gardeners won't be able to have their plants, and throughout the UK. I'm not the only one. I know of another nursery who sells wholesale, and their figures are, they're going to lose £500,000. So £500,000 here, £500,000 there. All of a sudden, spread that across 20 businesses.
And then spread this across the entire economy, because we've seen how the fishing industry is affected. We've seen how farming is affected. We've seen other industries being affected. And here is just another one to add to the list. The horticultural industry.
And there's the knock-on effect of all the jobs for couriers that deliver our plants, the guys that, are doing all the packing and the handling. It's not a good situation at all.
Now, the government says it is helping. It's put in place a movement assistance scheme to help bear the cost of certification. Is that working for you?
Well, this is the thing. At the moment, we've gone for the certification, and they can't provide it to us on the basis that they should have been inspecting the goods, the plants, effectively in their growing season last summer when they.
So the government has said, okay, we'll give you a certification that allows you to jump over these restrictions. But the certification for this was necessary to be carried out last year. Now, why the hell didn't Boris Johnson's government tell producers, for example, farmers or these producers, they knew, or if they didn't know, it was absolute incompetence. So if they didn't know incompetence, if they knew and didn't do anything about it, then I don't know what to say. But these businesses should have been informed that if you want to export your products into the EU, you need to be prepared. Now, of course, the problem here is that the amount of time was extremely limited. The EU said, look, if you want to do a trade deal and cover issues like this, you need time. The British government under Boris Johnson and Michael Gove said, we don't need time, we can do it all in a year. And now we're seeing the consequences of that. Boris Johnson had the possibility. The European Union said, if you want to extend the transition period, we're open to that. Extend it for as long as you want. We don't care. It's not a problem for us. It was a problem for Boris Johnson because he had to keep his idiots, the idiots within his party, the Brexiteers, the lunatics, he had to keep them happy. We have to get out of the EU as soon as possible. And some of the comments that I was reading from, frontline Brexiteers, hardline Brexiteers, ones in the comment section on these videos, Brexiteers on YouTube, were, let's just leave now. Can you imagine if Boris Johnson had left without a deal? Can you imagine if he had left the transition period halfway through? What people like Nigel Farage were calling for, a clean break Brexit, as he was calling. Can you imagine what the chaos would be like? There are a lot of problems. They're minimized somewhat because of these grace periods, because there was some sort of agreement, because of the withdrawal agreement as well. If that hadn't been there, can you imagine the chaos there would be? We can't even imagine it.
Growing, not now. They're in their dormant season in the winter, so they've given that as the justification of we're not doing inspections. You can't sell plants or plant products despite this grace period existing.
Okay, so that's your situation. You need this certificate to be able to ship to Northern Ireland, but you would have had to have begun work on that many months ago before you even knew this would be a requirement.
Correct. There are other mail order operators that are sort of operating in a shade of grey, however. These rules are not being applied universally, and they're just still sending out there without any sort of questions asked. So the legislation is being interpreted by different sort of agencies in different ways in different areas.
And how is a business supposed to operate in this manner? Once again, everything was done quickly. Everything was done in a haphazard way. And now businesses don't know if they're able to sell things abroad. According to some legislation, they can, but the government is telling them not to. Businesses are suffering in other ways. And what's the response from the UK government? The UK government is telling them, set up an office abroad. Move some of your operations to the EU. How is that a solution? We have created this problem, and instead of actually fixing the problem, here's a workaround. Go and move to the EU and set up an office in the EU. Now, if you're growing plants, you can't do that, which we're going to hear in a moment.
So, there's other companies just still sending out with no problems at all, whereas in our local area, the legislation is being interpreted as you can't send plants or plant products, despite the wording being that way. And, we've taken legal advice and everything on this matter, and we believe we firmly can.
But you're not able to because they don't agree. What does this mean for your business in the long term? Will you keep working to get the certificates that you need, or will you move away from the Northern Ireland market altogether?
Well, we're working to get it resolved, but obviously if we can't resolve it and we still want to serve that market, the only option is to then go and set up a base in Europe, which kind of defeats the whole object of building a stronger economy in the UK through Brexit.
There we have it. The nugget of the day. Building a stronger economy through Brexit. The British government don't care about the economy. They don't care about building a better Britain. Because if they did, they wouldn't have made these ridiculous decisions. These businesses, many of these businesses are probably going to close, or at least downsize and lay off staff. Because if you're selling your products to Northern Ireland and then it becomes too problematic and it's no longer feasible, then you're just not going to do it. If it's becoming expensive to sell products to the EU, you're not going to do it. Your customers are not going to pay the extra cost. Now, some businesses will still be able to operate. If you're selling luxury cars and your customer is willing to pay a bit extra, that's okay. But not all businesses are like that. Many businesses operate on a very narrow margin, and they're not going to be able to take this extra cost, be it for customs or whatever, or be it just for the extra staff that you need to complete all this extra paperwork. These businesses have been abandoned by Boris Johnson and Michael Gove, and the response from the government is, well, either go to Europe, transfer part of your operation to Europe, or wait and see. And neither of those are feasible for businesses. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot. I want to say a big thank you to all of my patrons. You ensure that this channel continues to exist. I'm eternally grateful for all of your support. If you join Patreon, you will receive instant access to our Discord server, where we have both audio and video chats. You can chat with me and other patrons, where we discuss important and non-important issues. Becoming a patron per month costs about the same as a large coffee, so why not check it out?